I had zero plans to watch Paranormal Activity 4 because the first three films are just not very good. But then I was watching Scary Movie 4 and it parodied Paranormal Activity and it kind of put me in the mood to watch the fourth one. So I did, and I still wouldn't say that it's a good film, but I would say it feels better than the previous ones. It's still not a scary film, but there was one moment where I genuinely jumped. It was a very effective jump scare, and I will, at the end, tell you what that moment is. I don't want to spoil it, but just in case you're interested. So there won't be any spoilers for the most part. Paranormal Activity 4 was released in 2012. It's directed by Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman, and we have a cast including Kathryn Newton, Matt Shively, Aiden Lovekamp, and various others. Performances, very good, no problems there at all. The narrative seems a little bit more well developed than the previous films. I kind of felt this with the third one, not to this extent, but it felt like the quality of storytelling was getting a little better, and I feel like that's improved upon with this fourth one, so possibly going forward it gets even better still. It's not enough to completely save the film, but I found it to be a lot more impressive, and the character of Alex, our protagonist, played by Kathryn Newton, I'd say has to be one of the most well-written, well-developed characters out of all of the Paranormal Activity films so far. Again, I wouldn't say she's the most fascinating, but certainly I'd say the best so far. And she lives with her parents and her brother, her young brother, and they have a neighbour, and the neighbour has a young child. And I don't want to say too much about the neighbours. I feel like it wouldn't be a spoiler if I told you more, but just in case you don't want to know going into it, I won't give away too much. And strange things start to happen, and paranormal things begin to happen, and obviously this is mostly all shown through video cameras, and in general I think they made a good use of that. There were times when it didn't always feel like we were looking through cameras. For example, and I don't think this is a criticism, I think it might actually be a benefit. For example, early on in the film, they were at a children's sports game. I think it was a sports game, and they're obviously recording it on their phone, so we can see that it's camera footage, but it didn't necessarily feel like camera footage. But because they are utilising that type of camera, it means we get to have much more variety in the things that we're looking at. So it feels a little different. It doesn't always feel like we're looking through cameras, but we definitely are. That's certainly something that can be explained through use of smartphones or whatever. And I think that allows them to have a little bit more variety in the locations and where we can go with the characters. So I definitely thought that worked quite well. With regards to the horror aspect, for the most part, it's still not scary. I still think that it's not as much as the first two films. I absolutely think the first two films were written for people who don't like horror, because there's nothing scary about them. Whereas this one's getting a little bit more jump scary. I think they're a bit more effective. The narrative itself is maybe slightly suspenseful. I wouldn't say scary, but there are moments where something might be lurking or something might be about to happen, and there is that anticipation. But it still doesn't really deliver. But there were, I'd say, two where I genuinely jumped, and one that made me jump a tiny little bit. And credit where it's due, the horror aspect is getting stronger as the films go on. I still think there's a lot of room for improvement, but the Paranormal Activity films are going in the right direction, so it leaves me with a little bit more hope for what might be around the corner. Do I recommend it? If you're curious, yes. If you're looking for a really scary film, I'd say no. If you haven't seen the previous Paranormal Activities, I'd say no, because there is benefit in watching them in order of release. You don't necessarily have to, but then again, there's not much else to be enjoyed other than some story development, and the horror aspect just isn't very strong. So I'd say if you've seen the previous ones and you didn't mind them, give it a go. I'd say if, like me, you feel they're improving in quality, then you might feel the same way about this one. But if you're just looking for a scary film, it's probably not worth it. And I will now tell you two moments that really, really made me jump. One really made me jump. One certainly made me feel a bit nervous. They're not spoilers for things that happen, but obviously I am going to say what happens in those moments. So if you don't want to know what the scary bits are, then this is all I have to say. And the moment that really, really made me jump is when the chandelier came crashing down from the ceiling. It was very, very effective. And the other bit that kind of made me jump was when we were looking through, I think it would have been a webcam, and Alex kind of jumps into the frame. She just kind of appears out of nowhere, and that was very effective as well. So the horror aspect still isn't very strong, but it's getting better. The storytelling is a lot better. The camera work as well, I think, is more varied. It seems more almost believable. It's not something I really had an issue with the earlier films, but there did seem to be cameras in all of the right places, whereas this one feels a little bit more natural and believable in that regard. So at some point, I will watch the next one. I think the next one is when we stop having numbers. I think the next one might be the marked one. In fact, I will check so I can provide valid information. Yes, the next one is the marked ones, and then the Ghost Dimension, and then Next of Kin. So I think I will watch the marked ones at some point. And for now, I can say that while Paranormal Activity 4 still isn't very scary, the narrative was a lot better. There were a couple of solid jump scares, and in general, things are definitely getting better with the series.